Welcome to Pushing the Limits, the show that gets deep into the psyche of those who have achieved the extraordinary, from sports people to business people to social change innovators, cutting to the chase to unlock the secrets of their success. Brought to you by Running Hot Coaching, the platform that helps you achieve all your health and fitness goals.
Well, hi everybody, it's Lisa Tamati here at Pushing the Limits, and welcome back to the show. If you're a returning listener and if you're new to the show, welcome, and you're in for an absolute treat today. I have some exciting guests on the show, but the man I have with me now could change your life, your future. He is the world's leading expert on anti-aging, on telomere shortening, and I have the amazing privilege that I am very close friends with his wife. So I've managed to get Dr. Bill Andrews on the show. He's also an extreme ultramarathon runner, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as well as his groundbreaking research in anti-aging. So welcome to the show, Dr. Bill Andrews, all the way from Reno. How are you, Bill?
Thank you very much.
It's a real privilege to have you on today. Now, before we get into the science stuff, before we get into, all the complicated sort of stuff that you're involved with the incredible research that you and your team at Sierra Sciences do, I want to know a little bit, and I know a bit of your background, but I want to talk about your running career, because I know everyone knows you as this amazing scientist. But you're an overachiever not only in the science world, but also in ultramarathoning world. How long have you been doing ultras for, Bill?
21 years now. I ran my first ultramarathon 21 years ago.
21 years ago. So may I give away how old you are?
Yeah, please. Go ahead.
So 66. So that makes what? 45 you started?
Yes. But I've been running since I was 10 years old. I ran my first endurance race when I was 10. And then I ran cross country and track all through high school and college. Started running marathons in graduate school. And so I ran, did a lot of marathons between 1981 and 1998, when 1998 was when I ran my first ultramarathon. Or
wow.
Maybe it was, it was 1996
wow.
when I ran my first ultramarathon.
Amazing. And you've been doing it ever since. And I know, we've both done, the likes of Death Valley. How many times have you run through the Badwater Ultramarathon?
Twice.
And
that's probably going to be the most, I will never do it again. Both times I thought the race actually wasn't that hard, but my feet got so blistered that so I ran it 2 years in a row, and when I ran it the second year, my feet still hadn't recovered from the first year. And so after the second year, my feet were beyond recognition. They were so badly burned and blistered at the bottom. And it took so long to heal. I said, I am never doing that race again.
And you reckon it wasn't that hard? I mean, I found that my feet were actually great. I didn't even get many blisters, but I've got Maori feet, you see, good native feet. Oh. But I was toast, I found those extremely tough races, both of them. Well,
I acclimated by being in a sauna every day for an hour.
Yep.
You get into these 180 degrees saunas, and I forget if it's Fahrenheit or centigrade, but I think it's Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
And the first time you get in, you can't even stay in for 15 minutes. But after like a month or two of doing that every single day, you're running inside the sauna for like an hour, and so it's really easy to get acclimated to the heat, and that made Badwater easy for me. It's just that it wasn't no acclimation for the bottoms of my feet. That was the problem.
Oh, and you've also done La Ultra the High, another race that we have in common, another incredibly tough race and a very dangerous and exciting adventure. And the first time, tell us a little about your journey the first time, because you did it the year before I went and had a few dramas up there the first time round.
Well, it was really exciting because I did it the very first year it ever existed. And only three of us did it. Mark Cobain, Molly, my wife, who wasn't my wife at the time, and myself. Nobody else, a lot of other people signed up, but they all dropped out only because they heard these stories from the Indian government saying it's impossible. A human cannot run at those altitudes for that distance. And so we were entering the unknown, venturing into the unknown, trying to see what would happen.
Yeah,
pioneers. And now, unfortunately, I actually acclimated to the altitude really well with a device called ALTOLAB, ALTOLAB. And I know that Ray Sanchez later did it, and I was the one that told Ray Sanchez about it. But I found out that the very first day I got there, I was able to go up to 18,000 feet and run with no problem at all.
Wow.
And so in that sense, I don't know if I might have been cheating or not, but I didn't have to suffer like a lot of other people did. I actually ran over the first 18,000 foot peak.
You're crazy.
But the problem is that when I got to the lowest altitude, I suddenly started getting a really sharp pain in, just above my stomach in that area. And I thought it was because there was a lot of smog in downtown Leh. And so I thought maybe something was happening there. So I got into a car and asked them to drive me out so I could breathe some fresh air, but it just got worse. And then all of a sudden I said, get me to the hospital fast.
Yeah.
And it turned out I had a gallbladder attack.
Oh,
and everybody says it was completely unrelated to the running. It just was really bad timing.
Yep.
So that year I only made it 50 miles. And then Molly, who was ahead of me at the time, she ended up finding out that I was in the hospital when she had already done over 100 miles. And when she heard, she started running, and then all of a sudden she just realized that she lost enthusiasm.
Yeah, totally.
Turned around and ran back and told the race director to take me to Bill.
Yeah, when you make some trouble.
So neither one of us finished that year, but fortunately Mark Cobain finished and proved it was possible. And so Molly went back next year and she finished it. I went back 2 years later and finished it. And then surprisingly, when I went back, I again, at the lowest altitude of the race, started having some weird thing. I suddenly went to a walk when I was running downhill, and I thought, okay, something's wrong. And I told the race director, I need to see a doctor. Something's wrong here. The doctor came and checked me out, said I'm perfectly fine. So I got up and started walking again. And as soon as I got out of this little village where I was, I started feeling good again and ran up the next mountain.
Wow.
And so I think I was just having some allergic reaction to something in the air.
Well, I actually, because we both, I did it that second year, and I really had big trouble with, it felt like someone had a fist right under my lungs, right up in I don't know, it felt like a sort of a stitch thing. So I had that trouble too, going through Leh. From halfway down the Kardong La, down through Leh, and then out the other side. For a long time, it felt like someone had a fist in my stomach.
Mine felt like a knife. Felt like a knife. Somebody was stabbing me.
Well, I wonder if it's something to do with, going up and down, and the smog was incredibly bad.
The pollution in the air, because Leh, even though it's way up in the Himalayas, there's no smog control or everything. Every vehicle that goes by you is pushing out black smoke.
Yeah.
The second year when I ran it, though, I wore a mask.
Yep.
The whole way, and I got a mask from ALTOLAB again.
Oh wow!
So it was a kind of a weird looking mask that had this thing where it covered my mouth, but it worked really well, and I never suffered any problems. But I still had the problems later on when I got out of Leh, and 40 miles later, entered another little village, and I forget the name of it, but it was pretty much near before just going up the second hill.
Yeah. It was a incredibly brutal race, but you guys were pioneers doing it the first year, and all I can remember is Molly didn't manage it that year, and because of the dramas, etc. And I thought, I'm going to be the first woman. I'm going to go. And then when I got over there, and there were four of us, 4 women and 2 guys, and I was going, for crying out loud, I thought I'd be the only one. I was quite peeved off at that.
Well, see, I have the privilege of being the oldest person that's ever finished.
Wow.
And I think Molly is the oldest woman to ever finish.
Yeah, for sure.
And she's also the first American woman to ever finish.
Yeah, and I was the first Kiwi woman and the second woman ever, so that was pretty cool, behind Sharon Gator, who's an amazing athlete. But that was so Bill, you've also done the Barclay Marathons. Like, that's something I like. Who the hell takes on that craziness? Because I wouldn't even dare take on that one.
That's the most exciting race on the planet.
You didn't finish it. Surely you didn't.
Okay, the name of this show is pushing the limits, right?
Yeah, but that one is ridiculous.
I believe in pushing the limits and doing it for fun. And the way that makes it fun is that, I set the highest goals possible, but I always adjust accordingly.
Yes, yeah.
You can't reach those goals.
I love that. I love that. That's a great way to approach.
So whenever I finish a race, I've always accomplished something great.
Fantastic.
Even though I didn't come anywhere close to beating my original goal. I beat the latest goal that I probably set at 99 miles when I was in a 100-mile race.
Wow.
But that's the Barclay Marathons are like that. You always go thinking, I'm going to finish.
Yeah.
And then let's see if I can. Now I'm going to try to see if I can make one lap.
Yeah.
Which is like 20 miles. And I've done that race 3 times now.
What was the furthest that you got?
20 miles. And that was, I could have gone further, but okay, so let me say the first 2 times I only made it 8 miles.
Wow.
And what they said is if you don't do the first 8 miles in 4 hours, how could you not do 8 miles in 4 hours?
I know, but this is...
If you don't do it in 4 hours, you have to disqualify yourself and go cross country back down the hill to the start finish line. So that happened the first 2 times.
Yep.
And the third time I went early and practiced on the course and learned the course, and because a lot of the problem is hard to find your way, and a lot of times it's like, how do you get out of certain jams? There's one thing called son of a bitch ditch, okay? And it's like you go down in this ditch and you can't get out of it. And so the third year I ran, I took a grappling hook with me. I took
wow. This is a brutal race.
Things you put on your shoes that let you walk on ice. And I had ninja claws. And those work like beautiful. I jumped into that ditch and climbed right out the other side. No problem. But
good tip if I ever do it.
At about 15 miles into the race, I encountered another runner lying on the ground having some kind of heart attack or something like that. Oh my gosh! Yeah. And so all of a sudden my whole goal changed, and so we had to go over 2 mountain ranges to get to any help. So I ran up to the top of one mountain, ran back down, got his pack, carried his pack up while he crawled. Then we did the same thing on the second mountain, and then as a result, I didn't make the 20-hour cutoff in time, 20-mile cutoff in time. But he was saying that he was going to talk to the race director about letting me go on anyway. I explained. I said no, because I didn't want the race director to know what happened to that guy. It's like that would have made too much bad press for him. Yeah. Unfortunately, that guy recently passed away right after running a different race that was also called.
So he had obviously probably some heart issue or something going on. Yeah. But the Barclay Marathons, people, if you can see it on Netflix and a few other places, it is the most craziest, stupidest, amazing race there is. And there's only I think, is it 7 or 8 people in the history have ever completed it?
Something like that, and something it's been amazing. 30 years running every year.
So when Bill says he got to the 20-mile mark, that means something even, you know what I mean? Like it's just not... I've seen people do Northburn 100-milers, really, really tough race, our race over here, and go to Barclay and not finish the first round. It's that tough, but... still my number one goal to finish that race, though. Really? Still? Oh, my gosh. Yeah, I'm going back. Oh, well, that's a good segue, because to do that, you're going to have to keep yourself from aging, because, and this has been the focus now of your academic and science career for the last, basically your whole entire adult life, has it not? Well, since I was 56 years, because I was 10 years old when my father first put the idea in my head. So what did he say to you? That you've been on this anti-aging mission for 55 years. He knew that he observed that I was very interested in medicine and science. My science teacher at my elementary school was telling my parents, this kid's just unbelievably interested in this kind of stuff. And one day I was out in the front lawn of our house looking through a telescope, and my father came out to the lawn and just said, hey, Bill, since you're so interested in medicine and science, when you grow up, you should become a doctor and find a cure for aging. And he said, I don't know why nobody's done that yet. And it was like, I thought, well, that sounds like a great idea. I'd love to do it. And so I became interested in that from that moment. And I just spent years and years actually following everything I could, all through high school, college, just trying to
figure out what was the secrets to aging. And it wasn't until the early 1990s that I really found what I thought solved everything, and that was the tips of our chromosomes are actually a clock of aging.
So this is the telomeres, the famous. So this discovery, this was actually discovered, I believe, in the 1950s by the Russians, telomeres themselves. Is that correct?
Actually, telomeres were discovered in 1940s by.
Okay.
I'm going blank on her name. Ruth. I remember her first name is Ruth, but I can't remember her last name.
Yep.
But a scientist, she discovered telomeres, and then Elizabeth Blackburn and Carol Greider and Jack Szostak discovered that. They don't shorten. See, everybody was saying telomeres need to shorten, okay, because whenever a cell divides and the chromosomes are duplicated, there was no mechanism known inside of a cell to actually duplicate the very ends of the chromosome. So every new chromosome was going to be shorter than the old chromosome.
Yeah.
But it was Blackburn and Greider and Szostak that observed that they didn't shorten in a pond scum organism called Tetrahymena.
Uh-huh.
And so they speculated there had to be some enzyme, which they called telomere terminal transferase. And they discovered some aspects of it, more specifically what's called the RNA component. But they never connected the dots to anything related to aging or cancer. They were just studying this mechanism. It was later on when a guy named Calvin Harley wrote a paper speculating that maybe this is the clock of aging. Mm-hmm. And, so I met Cal Harley because he was like-minded with me. He didn't believe in all the theories. They didn't make sense about aging. We both believed that there had to be some kind of clock ticking inside of our cells. And this was the only thing that ever was discovered that could be that clock. And so when I talked to Cal, I asked him if anybody has figured out a way to lengthen them, because if it is the clock of aging, the way to prove it is to lengthen them and see if cells get younger. Mm-hmm. And he said, no, nobody's been able to figure out how to lengthen them. They've been working on it, including Blackburn and Greider, who had been with the pond scum organism, but nobody had been able to figure it out. So he hired me. I had a background already in a lot of big blockbusters in biotech. And so he hired me to work on it. And I ended up discovering this enzyme called telomerase, which is telomere terminal transferase, but we didn't call it that. We called it telomerase instead. After only 3 months.
So when was this? Which year was this, Bill? Because this is just building a timeline.
Well, let's say first, Greider and Szostak and Blackburn first discovered that telomeres don't shorten in the mid-1980s. But no, they didn't put any significance to it.
Yep.
And then I ended up discovering human telomerase in 1992, I think it was, maybe 1993.
Yep.
Then showed that and then it turned out telomerase is only produced in our reproductive cells, and that's why our children are born with telomeres, chromosomes just as long as ours.
So let's take a step back and just walk through the science, so that because like this is for you second nature, and for most people it's like, what the hell? What are telomeres? Yeah. So I'll try and put it in layman's terms, and you correct me where I'm wrong. So all of our cells, every cell in our body, replicates itself, and before it dies, every cell knows it has to replicate itself before it dies. When it goes to replicate itself, each time it's like a poor photocopy. There's a slight difference from the original, and the difference is the telomeres. Now, the telomeres are, you use the analogy of the plastic at the end of shoelaces. Yes. And if the shoelace replicated itself each time, that little bit of plastic at the end that holds it all together gets shorter and shorter and shorter till it gets to the point where it's so short that the shoelace unravels, basically.
Yes.
And so that shoelace unraveling represents the helix within the chromosome with our DNA, then starts to unravel, and this is when we die. So from what I understand, we are born with telomeres the length of 10,000 bases, correct?
Yes. Yes.
At the end of our chromosomes, which are around 100 thousand bases is it measured
100 million
length?
bases.
100 million
100
bases.
million.
So it's very, very tips of these. So what people need to understand is that these telomeres are replicated each time, but they get shorter and shorter as we age, and that's what's causing. So it's like a poor photocopy. Every time we're replicating ourselves, we're replicating a lesser. But that doesn't happen in our reproductive.
Perfect.
Is that clear? Yeah.
Yes. No, that was really good. I sometimes explain it that way too, but clearly you've done your homework.
Oh yeah. I'm excited about it.
So you understand it very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that just doesn't happen in our reproductive cells, and it's just it makes sense that it couldn't, because we'd be extinct because our chromosomes would be so short. We couldn't exist.
You die. So our babies are born with a full-length telomere on each cell. So
yes.
Answer a question for me that I've been thinking about the last few days. You know Dolly the sheep that was cloned?
Yes.
That was cloned, but it was the same age as its mother when it was born, correct?
Yes.
Because it didn't have this telomerase actually doing its job. So
it never went through reproductive cells.
So answer me one more question, and this is a very personal question for me right now because we've been trying to have a child, and the problem that I've got is I'm old. I'm very old. I'm 49, and the doctor's going, your eggs are old. If our reproductive system doesn't age, why are my eggs too old?
Because of damage from the environment.
Okay.
So and it's not, it's actually kind of incorrect to say that the eggs are old. It's the eggs are more depleted. Okay. It's when you every woman is born with 450 eggs or cells that are destined to become egg cells.
Wow.
And when she reaches puberty, she starts to lose one a month. And 450 months later, she loses her last one. And that's when she enters menopause.
I thought there were thousands of eggs or millions of eggs in there.
Well, there's a lot of cells in there, but most of them are actually there to just nourish the other cells that are actually destined to become egg cells. And so that's really a problem. I've never considered menopause an aging related thing. It's just correlated with aging, but it's more of a counting mechanism. But the solution is actually very near, and that's companies like Biotime, Biotime. They're working on making it so that they can turn your skin cells into egg cells using what's called induced pluripotency, and that way, even when you're 70 years old, you could probably have a child.
Oh my gosh, I've got hope.
That's right around the corner. Yeah, that's right around the corner.
Oh, can I get myself on the list? I'll be the first one to experiment.
Yeah. Well, go to it's. I forget their exact website, but if you do a Google search for Biotime, and they're located in Alameda, California, in case there's more than one Biotime in the world.
Yep.
And the main guy who's the president of the company is Michael West, who just happens to be the guy that hired me at Geron Corporation. He used to be the founder. He was the founder and president of Geron Corporation.
Oh, you got to hook me up.
Where I discovered telomeres.
You'll have to introduce me. See if we can recharge my eggs in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But all jokes aside, I've heard you speaking. You've worldwide media attention for the breakthroughs that you and your company Sierra Sciences has had. I know that you have gone through back a while ago it was 300 and something thousand compounds to try to lengthen, to find the enzyme that turns on the telomerase?
It was not an enzyme, to find the molecule that will get into our cells and induce our cells to produce the enzyme telomerase.
Right, so this is like a switch that we obviously have within our reproductive cells. That is
in every cell of our body.
Oh, it's in every cell, but it's not turned on in the rest of our somatic cells, only in our reproductive cells. So in our reproductive cells, it is turned on, and so when a reproductive cell duplicates itself, so like when the baby's developing inside the womb, it is making a complete and proper copy of each cell without the shortening. Is that correct?
Yes, that's exactly correct. In reality, and more accurate, but probably overdoing it here, when a reproductive cell divides, the telomeres do get a little shorter, but then telomerase re-lengthens them. Okay? Cell divides again, it gets shorter, and then telomerase re-lengthens them. So I often compare it to like a tug of war. You've got things shortening and lengthening going on at the same time in your reproductive cells.
Because this is one of the questions that I've been thinking about in the research is if you can lengthen telomeres, okay, you found the breakthrough, you're lengthening the telomeres, how can that actually reverse the damage already done to the genetic, the actual helix, where the DNA and the chromosome? How can it actually it can't. It can't,
but cells that have damage are eliminated from the body when there are other healthy cells that can replace them. And that's something, a lot of people overlook when they talk about how, you got to solve the damage problems. But if the damage has no negative effects on the cells, so what? But if it does have negative effects on the cells, it probably makes them grow slower and unhealthier and less able to compete with other cells. And so you can eliminate them. But if the other cells in your body have short telomeres, they lose the ability to replace those damaged cells. But yeah, when we do experiments in the vitro, in the petri dish, and we have a mixture of damaged cells and undamaged cells, after a few months of culturing, the damaged cells are gone. The healthy cells take them over.
They take over, so you get enough. So it takes a while to get through this process, because in the laboratory, in the petri dish, you've turned skin cells, older skin cells, into infant skin cells, correct?
Yes.
And you can keep human cells alive indefinitely. They don't age within the petri dish environment.
Yes.
That's amazing.
We actually call it immortal. We call them immortal.
Immortal, hence the title of your documentary, which is worldwide famous documentary, The Immortalists. So you've also, I know that you gave some compounds to Harvard University, correct? That they did some rat studies a while back.
Yeah, we didn't actually give them any compounds. What they did is they licensed the telomerase gene from Geron Corporation,
right,
where I was working, and with the idea that they were actually thinking that telomerase would cause cancer. So they developed a gene therapy way of introducing telomerase to the mouse cells, all the cells of the body, and we're shocked when the mice didn't get cancer. Actually, the rate of cancer decreased, which is something I'd always been saying, that keeping telomeres long is the best way to prevent and fight cancer. Wow. But to his surprise, after 3 weeks, he saw what he calls a remarkable reversal of the aging process. He saw all the mice get younger in every way imaginable, which nothing else on the planet has ever done that. Everything you hear about resveratrol and NAD and all those other things, they may improve the energy of an animal, but they never reverse everything about aging. That's what telomeres did, and that's the best, I call, supportive concept that we've ever seen for the idea that telomeres are the clock of aging. But he was really blown away. And Diane Sawyer she's a newscaster. I don't know if you know her in New Zealand.
Yep,
she's very good. She did an interview of him, which is really remarkable. And a lot of times in my presentations, I show that interview because I was so excited about the fact that somebody proved what I was 99.9% certain to be the case. And now we just got to get in humans. And
so these old mice turned into younger mice.
In every way imaginable.
All parameters.
Dementia even disappeared.
Their brain size returned to normal.
Yes.
Their balding hair, their grey hair, their all the things that are associated with aging in mice, their obesity, everything reversed.
Yeah, but not just their brain size, their brain cognitive functions came back.
Wow.
Which has really gotten a lot of people. Now when I attend medical conferences, I find everybody saying, like dementia and Alzheimer's and things like that isn't a loss of memory. It's a loss of access to the memory. Oh. Memory is somewhere stored in your brain, and when you get Alzheimer's, you lose the connections that get access to that memory. So by lengthening the telomeres, it appears that it is very likely that lengthening telomeres restores access to that memory.
Wow.
So I believe that we actually have a clinical study underway right now to test Alzheimer's patients to see if we can prevent Alzheimer's.
Oh my gosh. So this is not just for anti-aging as in, we're going to live longer, but we're going to be living healthier in the future.
Oh,
so all these degenerative diseases, these horrible
Every
things.
person in the world that's working on trying to cure aging is not just trying to make us live longer without us being healthier. The goal of everybody is there's no point in living longer if you're not living healthier.
No.
So we got to live healthy longer. That's the goal, and reverse declining health as well as aging.
So how far away? I mean, you have gone through over, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands compounds now that help turn the human telomerase.
Over 500,000.
500,000 nowadays, my gosh. So every day you've got a robot in your laboratory that's testing all these compounds. Are these compounds that you're putting together, these are synthetic compounds of chemicals?
Yeah. Maybe for the first 200,000, we were doing chemicals at random.
Yep.
We ended up discovering some 900 different chemicals, and we were able that actually did induce telomerase in, we were testing fibroblast cells, which is a cell inside the skin.
Yep. So
these 900, we looked at the structures of all these 900, and we're able to divide them up into 37 different families. Okay, because there was a lot of them looked very similar to each other, so we could build them into 37 families. And then since then, we've been doing what's called medicinal chemistry. Instead of just picking chemicals at random, we've been designing our own chemicals based on the structures that we learned to increase potency and decrease toxicity. Some of them, some of the ones we discovered at random had severe toxic side effects, but then we were able to get rid of that toxicity by doing medicinal chemistry. And our best chemical to date is something called TAM818.
So that was, explain the name there, because you explained that to me before, and I thought that was interesting.
But the name of it was C0314818, because that was our 314,818th chemical we tested. Then we licensed that to a company called Defy Time, and they didn't like that name, so they changed it to TAM818, which stands for telomerase activating molecule 818.
And this is a proven actual compound that is available on the market today that will influence the aging. How potent is that compound?
It's not potent enough to make an 80-year-old become a 24-year-old.
Yep.
Okay. And we are working on developing things that are potent enough to do that right now. In fact, we have one in clinical studies right now. But TAM818, we estimate, is about 6-fold lower in potency than it takes to turn an old person into a young person.
Wow. So but it does away there.
Yeah. So I mean, that's 1/6 of the way there is way close. Okay. Because when years before we discovered TAM818, we had other chemicals that were maybe 100-fold less, and then 20-fold less, and 10-fold less, and then we got to 6. And but we kind of shifted gears because some new technology was developed. The technology of gene therapy wasn't new, but there was a new type of gene therapy that was discovered that had absolutely zero side effects. And so we employed that gene therapy to start delivering the gene to cells of the body. And we have, in the laboratory, just been able to reverse aging in every way imaginable in human cells. And so that gene therapy has been our approach right now, because that is, when I say that TAM818 is 6-fold less than the potency needed to reverse aging, this gene therapy is 30-fold higher than what we need to reverse aging. And so
30-fold higher than what we need to reverse it.
Unfortunately, it's super, super expensive.
Oh.
I mean, really, it's millions of dollars to produce enough to treat one person once. But a company called Libella, Libella, Libella Gene Therapeutics, licensed this from us, and they got approval to do a clinical study, and the clinical study is underway right now. So I'm really excited. I'm a spectator just like everybody else, but I'm real excited because for the first time ever, we will actually get to see if all my ideas for the last 25 years are real or not, are true.
So why didn't you, Bill, take this to market? Why did you get another company? So your Sierra Sciences does just the research on the thing, and then you pass the ball to someone who can actually bring it to market or get the clinical trials, in this case, going. And this is with clinical trials on actual humans, not human cells in a petri dish. This is...
Yeah. So the reason why we didn't do this ourselves is because from day one, when I first started this company in 1999, my business model was we would never become a marketing company, because every company like mine, as soon as they get a product on the market, they suddenly quit doing science.
Yep.
And so they hire all these business people, and the top scientists suddenly lose control, and next thing you know, all the scientists are fired, and the company's just becoming a marketing company.
Wow.
So I want to keep us doing research. I want to complete our goals, and we are licensing every discovery that we make to other companies that then market them, and they pay us a royalty, and the royalties, 100% of that royalty goes into the research. So that's how we get
better and whittling away at this problem. So this compound that is now being tested, that is 34-fold stronger than TAM81, or actually 34-fold stronger than actual reversal of aging.
So it'd be 30 times 6, so 180, about 200 times more potent than TAM818. But it's not a compound. It's not a compound. It's a gene therapy, which is very different. I compare it to like a soap bubble, and inside the soap bubble is the gene for telomerase. And when that soap bubble comes in contact with a cell, which you think of the big cell as another soap bubble, well, when they come in contact, they fuse and become one, just like any kids ever seen blowing soap bubbles in the air. When they bump into each other, they become one. And so it delivers the gene to the cells, and the gene is on, its switch is turned on, so that as soon as it gets in cells, it starts producing telomeres.
And that's, how do they get the delivery to every, I'm getting tactical here, but how do you get the delivery to every single cell in the whole of our billions of cells?
But that's the beauty of our bodies, is that every single cell of our body has to get nutrition from our blood.
Right.
So you put anything in the blood, it gets to every cell of the body.
Oh, wow.
Now there's some, like brain cells, where there's some blood-brain barrier where they don't get there, but it turns out this gene therapy gets there too.
Oh my gosh. I mean, the blood-brain barrier, I've been fighting with Mum in her case with an aneurysm, and using hyperbaric oxygen therapy to get through that blood-brain barrier. But so what do you think? Do you think it is within your grasp, or within the grasp of these other companies that are now licensing, that we will, within our lifetimes, or within the next 10 years, have products that can stop us from aging? And if we can, is it only going to be available to the super, super rich? Or is there products available now that have this TAM818 that the general public can get access to?
Well, I believe that the very first person's actually going to get treated probably in May. Let's say we're shooting for March, but there's been some things delaying us. But I would say that, when we get through our delays, Labella will then treat the first patient by probably May of 2018. And I expect that we will see age reversal before the end of this year, if not in less than 3 months afterwards.
Wow.
So well within our lifetime. But as you said, unfortunately, this is something only the super, super wealthy can afford.
Yeah.
And that's what Labella's business model is. The clinical study is so expensive that no company in the planet could actually afford to do it. But if there are people that are really suffering from what I call telomeropathies, okay, so some type of disease or something like that that's going to kill them because of telomere shortening.
Yep.
Then And if they're super wealthy, it's really to their advantage to pay whatever it costs, even if it's $5-10 million.
Yep.
Because it'll save their life. Okay. Now, if I was a multi-millionaire, and I was told that I was going to die within like a year because of something due to short telomeres, I would sign up for this in a minute.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I'm not super wealthy. And one of the reasons why I haven't done this on myself is I can't afford to make enough to do the treatment. But believe me, as soon as we get some of the patients signed up and we start getting, then Labella starts putting on the market and we start getting royalties, you believe I'm going to get this done on myself as soon as possible.
Yeah, man.
Even though I feel like I'm already solved most of the problems, but I'm just excited about the idea of linking my children.
Yeah, no,
yes.
Actually for you and for your family and for your friends and for everybody that's listening, like this is the hope. This is the hope that we're going to be able to.
This is the whole reason. My whole goal in life right now is to do this, and so I'm just excited. As I said before, I'm a spectator like everybody else, but I can't wait to see what happens with the first patients.
This is going to be really, and we'll have to do another interview in a year's time to see where that exactly is at and what's happening with it and how it's gone. Is there any downside to this lengthening? You said I remember an interview talking about cancer, and there was some discussion, is this going to actually make cancer worse? And you said in your belief it wasn't. Is there any other downside to this human telomerase? Why hasn't the universe turned this on? Why hasn't nature made this available to us so that we don't age? What's your opinion?
Well, there are several questions there, but first let me say that the cancer, there are people saying that this is going to give everybody cancer. But that's all hearsay. There's no data to support it. And for every study that's ever been done that even suggests possibly that there might be a cancer issue, there's over 100 other papers showing that telomerase actually prevents cancer and fights cancer. So people not taking this therapy are going to be at higher risk of cancer than people that do take the therapy.
Absolutely.
And then, so the other question was, why did nature not give this to us?
Yeah.
This is something that it's common sense, but a lot of people never think this way until it's actually explained. In order from an evolutionary perspective, in order for any kind of species to survive, it needs to be able to shuffle its genes. Okay, and that's why we always have a male and a female breed to produce an offspring, because that creates a randomness of genes that's never existed every time anybody's born, any animal or human is born.
Yep.
Okay, so in order for the shuffling to occur, it's important that the offspring interbreed with each other. Okay?
Yep.
And if the old never die, then the offspring will never be able to survive. I mean, the offspring could never compete with the old people, or the old animals. So every species, and it turns out there's a multitude of ways that different species have done this. Every species has to figure out a way to knock off the old after the old have raised their young. Okay, so once any animal has raised its young, it's only in the way it's better for the survival of the species if that person or animal is removed from the population by finding some way to kill it off. Okay. Now, it turns out humans, dogs, cats, horses, sheep, pig, and deer all did that by telomere shortening. Okay. So we and the other animals I just mentioned are designed so that our telomeres get to a critically short length just about the same age as when we've finished raising our young.
Yep.
Okay. Now, other animals like rodents, mice, and rabbits and things like that, they don't have telomere shortening. They do it by what's called oxidative stress and mitochondria dysfunction. The experiment that was done, what you were talking about at Harvard on mice, that was actually done on engineered mice that were engineered to age like humans with telomere shortening, which was unheard of in the mouse world. But
is that Aubrey de Grey's work? Is that
Aubrey de Grey? Yeah. What about Aubrey de Grey?
Was that his work? Is that his work, the mitochondria dysfunction and?
Yes.
Yeah.
So now I believe that mitochondrial dysfunction and oxidative stress do impact humans too. So I'm very, very interested in everything Aubrey de Grey is doing.
Right.
But I believe that we're going to find, I believe that telomere shortening is the number one thing we need to target. And then maybe after we eliminate telomere shortening, then we're going to actually start seeing mitochondrial dysfunction and oxidative stress affecting our health and age.
Effect.
But I'm guessing that we'll live to be 150 before we see that.
Wow.
In which case, I'm going to be grateful that Aubrey de Grey has done his work so that when I turn 150, I don't have to worry about that.
I love it. And I love this big visionary approach, what do you, if Aubrey de Grey has the breakthroughs that he needs and you have the breakthroughs that you need, theoretically we could live, 500 years.
Hey,
until we
I'm in no hurry to die.
No, me neither.
I love living. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it as long as I can.
Do you have? You must have some. Excuse me, critics.
Yeah.
Who say you're playing? You're going against God or you're against creation, against the normal flow of things in the world and nature. If we all live longer, then we wouldn't be able to support our population, all of that sort of ethical and moral stuff. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, first of all, we do have critics. There are people saying that this is something we shouldn't be doing. It's not natural and stuff like that. But it turns out every religious group we've ever talked to is in full support of it.
Really?
Just every religious group is also going to have members of their organizations that are just a little bit out there and think it's wrong, but the top officials, let's say, in various religious groups have said this is a good thing. We in my very first book, we actually had a representative of the Catholic Church write a chapter on how what we were doing was God's will. Okay, what she wrote was that God kicked us out of the Garden of Eden, where we were immortal, and told us find our way back.
Wow.
And Catholic Church said this is part of finding our way back. So, and then,
wow.
All the, especially in India, where you and me both, where we were both there, we talked with a lot of monks and things like that, and they all were like, this is important. We got to do this. I haven't encountered any religious group at all that's opposed to what we're doing.
Wow.
But there are critics that say that how are we going to deal with overpopulation?
Yep.
How are the young ever going to get jobs if the old never retire? Things like that. And so there is going to be some mess. I'm going to be responsible for a lot of trouble. But I always think of it this way. If 100 years from now we have a cure for aging and we have all the problems that anybody could ever imagine, and somebody says we need to put a vote, put something on the ballot that says we should ban the cure for aging. And I don't think anybody's ever going to vote in favor of doing that. I think as bad as things can be, they're never going to be as bad as they are now, where we have just incredible numbers of people. 150,000 people die every single day. Most of these people are and most of it is all age related.
Yep.
And these people are in nursing homes and hospices and assisted living care places. And it's like horrible thing that we have going on. And this is what I want to be. Your mother is probably going through that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
My father did before he passed away. It's just an awful thing, and we got to end that. But there's going to be problems. Now, I'm very in favor of NASA doing whatever they can to find
the next
other Earth-like planets, because we just might have to move there.
Yeah, I mean, this sounds all like science fiction, and we're talking in theories. I mean, and perhaps let's worry about that, problem when we get to it, because we're and maybe we need to stop reproducing so much, or I don't know. There's 100 other things that we can discuss, but let's solve this horrific degenerative process. And if we do have to die, then I would rather die at the age of 150 running an ultra marathon somewhere fully healthy and just drop dead, rather than going through 50 years of decline and slowly but surely losing myself and my abilities. And what I see in our older people, and with the journey I've had with my mum in the last couple of years, the horrific stuff that you have to deal with when someone is disabled, and all of these horrible things that happen to us. If we can find a way to stop all that, and then we just sit down one day and die, I'm quite happy with that.
Yeah. Well, living a long time is going to be a side effect of living healthy. Okay? And that's the goal. Well, we got to make us healthy. You and I got to both be running ultra marathons when we're 150 years old.
Amen to that one. We'll be the first ones to be still doing it. Yeah. Speaking on that, Molly did say to me, your lovely wife, ask Bill about his studies on endurance runners and their longevity. Have you done some studies on that, Bill? Because I need some ammunition.
We haven't, but others have. There's a lot of studies now that have been published in scientific peer-reviewed journals showing that the more intense your endurance, let me just say intense is the wrong word. Let's say the more endurance exercises you do, whether it's running, swimming, bicycling, or whatever, the longer your telomeres and the longer your lifespan will be.
Wow.
The problems that people hear about, like these runners dying young and things like that, is not because of the distance. It's because of how fast and how much they're pushing it. So with all this data, it's really what's the big problem is inflammation. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you run every single day, you're not going to get inflammation. Your body's going to recognize running as a natural thing, and so it's not going to build all these immune cells to attack your joints where it thinks you're having invaders. It's not going to clog your blood vessels and things like that. If you are an occasional runner who runs like maybe once every 2 weeks or once a month, you'll probably do really well in a marathon, okay? But the next day you're going to be stiff as a board.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that's because of inflammation. That's all the reason why you're not stiff as a board immediately when you finish a race, and it takes like 12 to 24 hours later before you are, is because you start producing all these immune cells that migrate to your joints and things like that because they think you're under attack, and that inflammation, and it also gets in your blood vessels and clogs your blood vessels. That inflammation is what causes people to die young. So if you take my attitude is, when it quits being fun, quit. Okay. Save it for another day. Now,
so that doesn't mean though, like in ultras, obviously it's not all fun and games. I mean, you and I know that there's a hell of a lot of pain and suffering and exhaustion. So, should we not be doing that distance, or should we be?
I actually,
maybe not, but I.
Yeah, I actually, I don't take the attitude. I never let myself get totally exhausted in an ultra, unless it's something really important, like ultra the high.
Yeah.
I did that. That probably shortened my lifespan a little bit. But most races, if I reach a point where I just am tired, I just quit. Okay, save it for another day, and that's actually a healthy thing to do because your body doesn't get totally destroyed. But it's easy for me, and I've actually back in 1998 when I did when I first started doing hundreds and stuff like that.
Yep.
I right away, ran more hundreds than anybody in the world and things like that.
In 1 year,
and I got every award. What's that?
You did more 100 milers in a year than anyone on the planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I got all these awards and records and stuff like that. So all of a sudden, I didn't have anything to prove anymore. So now when I run an ultra marathon, I don't have to finish.
Yep.
I just quit. If suddenly it's not feeling well, I drop out and I don't feel bad about it.
I can adopt that attitude, I think.
Yeah, well, I think that's a hard attitude for a lot of people to do, but that I promote that, and that's, I think, the healthiest thing to do. And surprisingly, the more I do it, the less likely it is I'm going to get weak and tired in my next race.
But so what about adrenal exhaustion? And, as a coach, and we're getting off topic here, but as a coach, I have seen a lot of, and in my own life, burnout, adrenal exhaustion, all of those things. Is that because we're pushing too hard and we need to pull back a little and then go again?
But I also think that's probably a lot to do with inflammation.
Okay.
And inflammation is the key. And
so we should that's diet, that's nutrition, supplementation, that's all of those good things.
And also, every person's different. Okay, so
yeah,
some foods will cause inflammation in people, on some people, and not others.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important for people to get blood work done to find out what foods actually give them inflammation. Now, for instance, I'm a vegan. Okay, worse than a vegan. I because I believe that all meats and dairy products cause inflammation.
Wow.
But I also found from blood work that blueberries give me inflammation, garlic gives me inflammation. So I don't do any of those things. High sugar gives everybody inflammation. So, I tell people to keep their sugar under 20 grams a day. But the key thing is to learn what's causing inflammation in you. Get rid of it. Drop it from your life, because that's the number one cause of aging and declining health is inflammation.
Yeah. And it's not like I've just done a food testing recently, food sensitivity testing, and we're going to be offering it for our athletes and so on. And I was surprised at what came back. Things that I thought I was eating healthily, like almonds and beetroot and things that were, I thought were good. And they were causing me inflammation reactions in my body. So, this is where epigenetics gets interesting. This is something that I've also interviewed recently, an epigenetics scientist, and they have now an online tool where people can do epigenetic testing based on all these measurements of the body. So once again, I think this personalized health future that we're looking at is very, very exciting, and it gives me great hope.
Well, everything I've been talking about is epigenetics.
Is it? Yeah.
Epigenetics is a new word for an old science.
Right.
It's like we've been doing epigenetic studies for 50 plus years.
Yeah.
But it's just a new word now to describe that stuff. It's all epigenetics.
And it's very exciting, isn't it, to that we're going to get access to more and more such tools so that we can understand ourselves personally what we should be eating and doing. And
I'm glad to hear you're going to be providing testing like that. I'll probably sign up too myself, because I'm always studying myself. The hospitals around here, the phlebotomists there know me by first name, because I go in all the time wanting to know things about what's going on in my blood. And the best way to measure inflammation is something called C-reactive protein, or CRP.
Okay.
And so my doctor fills out prescriptions, a bunch of them for me, and I put them in my briefcase. And every time I feel like I should get my inflammation checked, I just go to the hospital and give them the form, and I get blood work, and they tell me what my CRP score is.
Wow.
And it's important. I think they say on the forms and on the results that your CRP score should be under 2. I forget what the units are, but the number 2. I always get upset if it's higher than 0.2.
Oh, okay. So their scales are always out, aren't they? I mean, like in every blood test that I go and do, research and try and find out what's the real parameters that I should be looking at, not what the parameters against sick people are. The average of the last 100 sick people. So, okay, I'm going to go and do that one. Hey, look, Bill, where are you, how are you at Sierra Sciences, just in case there's a few millionaires and billionaires out there listening, which is quite unlikely, but you never know. How is your funding situation, and how do you get funding? How does that work? And if people are interested in helping you in that way, what can they do?
Well, let's say we used to get all of our funding from investors. And I've, over the last, between 1999 and about 2008, all of my funding, I raised about $33 million, $34 million, and that's how we got all of our funding. But then the global financial crisis of 2008 hit us, and all my investors lost the ability to invest anymore.
Yeah.
So we started, that's when we started licensing some of our discoveries. We'd already discovered TAM818. It was just sitting on a shelf. Nobody was doing anything with it. So suddenly we thought, well, let's license that to some company, and Defy Time got it. We also had natural products, and a company called Isogenics licensed those from us. And then
let's talk about Isogenics a little bit, because I know there was a little bit of controversy whether a multi-level marketing company really could have some of the answers, and product B is one of their products. And I know there's a lot of detractors around that. But John Andrews is a very clever scientist, the founder of Isagenix.
John Anderson, John Anderson.
Yeah, Anderson. Yeah. Sorry. Those products good? Is product B have a compound in it that is part of what you've researched? Yeah.
Well, let me first say that I've actually been appalled at most multi-level marketing companies. I think multi-level marketing is a great business model.
Yeah.
But it's so easy for crooks to take advantage of it. And so a lot of multi-level marketing companies are selling products that are just absolute junk. And I've been asked by many of them to join forces with them to help them raise money. And I've always refused because I didn't like their ethics.
No.
But that changed when I first met Isagenix. I've never met a company who had higher standards of ethics ever in multi-level marketing than Isagenix. And I've gotten to know the founders of the company, and it's amazing how at every meeting the founders are absolutely adamant that we will not sell a product that does not work. And they want to do clinical studies and et cetera. And I've never seen a multi-level marketing company that expels some of their associates. Multi-level marketing have associates, people that are trying to sell. If the associate starts making false claims, Isagenix cuts them loose.
Yep.
Says, okay, you're no longer part of Isagenix. And most other multi-level marketing companies really encourage saying things that are not correct and stuff like that. So I'm a very, very big fan of Isagenix. I take a lot of the Isagenix products, and we did license our natural products to them, and they mixed them together and created product B, which is now called Isagenesis.
Uh-huh.
I take it every day.
How potent is Isagenesis in relation to the breakthroughs in TAM818 and the stuff that you're working on now? It's actually, I'm going to say that all the products that work are TA65 out of TA Sciences, Isagenesis out of Isagenix, Defy Time products out of the TAM818 out of Defy Time, and this gene therapy. But I really not want to get into actually comparing them all because they're all good companies. They've all done clinical studies. The problem is that for all those 4 companies I just mentioned, there's probably 100 others that are just charlatans. It's like, because these products work, there's a whole bunch of other companies that have gotten on, they're starting to sell products that absolutely don't work. And so those are the ones that I want to avoid, make certain people stay away from. And I don't want to mention names, but it's important to check to make certain that the company has a lot of peer-reviewed studies showing that the product works. Not just one, because everybody can get just one study. But there's got to be a lot of peer-reviewed studies. And then there's a lot of companies that are saying they're selling a bottle that has telomerase in it. And that's so crooked because telomerase is too big to get inside of cells. But back to your question, all these products are good. I take them all. So you take TA65 is it? Which company is that? A company name? TA65.
That TA65 is sold by a company called TA Sciences.
Mm-hmm.
That's the very first one that's ever come on the market. It was discovered at Geron where I was working.
Yep.
Then after I left Geron, we did all the studies to verify that it does officially work. And for every product on the market that claims to induce telomerase, we check. And I would say maybe 1 in 100 actually are real. Okay. And so TA65 is the very first one we've ever checked that actually repeatedly, reproducibly works. But then they have the most clinical studies done too. Isagenix is product B. Theirs also works. They have not had as many clinical studies, but they do have some. But they haven't been around as long as TA65 has. And then Defy Time, they have some actually very official clinical studies done, where they've hired other labs to actually do a lot of studies on them. And so they've got significant clinical studies. But the first two, TA65 and isogenesis, those are natural products.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't require FDA approval because they're already determined. What's the word?
They're in the
generally regarded as safe. GRAS.
Yeah, it's safe.
Now, TAM818 is a pharmaceutical, so it required clinical studies and approval, and that's apparently been obtained because it's on the market now. And then the gene therapy that I mentioned, that's presently in clinical studies.
Yep.
But anybody who wants to take it can sign up to be in the study if they can afford it. As I said, that's millions of dollars. But it does.
Yeah.
For us to make it in our lab, to make enough to treat one person once, is millions of dollars, and that's one of the reasons why we can only make it at small scale and test it in human cells in a petri dish.
You had a study that was with primates too, I believe.
Not yet.
That's coming.
And what we did is we started searching for long before I met the people with Nobel. We started looking for a really small primate because, as I'd already told you, rodents like mice don't age by telomere shortening.
Right.
So we had to find what's the smallest rodent that does, and so primates was the ideal one.
Yep.
And the smallest primate is something called Madame Bertha's mouse lemur.
Yep.
Okay, and it's the size of your thumb.
Wow.
Okay,
cool.
It's a monkey the size of your thumb. It's not a monkey, it's a primate, but it's the size of your thumb.
Yep.
And they are only found on the island of Madagascar.
Yep.
And so we had all plans to go there, collect some. Ideally, we were going to look for people that were actually keeping them as pets so we can treat them, because we didn't feel like we wanted to cage them or cause them any trouble and things like that. We just want to treat them and then let them live their normal lives, eating everything, and see if they live longer and have age reversal. So we were working on that. It was like a lot of regulatory hurdles we had to go through. That's all of a sudden when Nobel came along and said they wanted to do this human study, and they thought they could get regulatory approval. So I said, oh, go for it. And now they've gotten regulatory approval. They have a clinical study done, and maybe we'll never do the primate study now. It's like the only reason you do a primate study is to be able to get the humans. But we have developed the pharmaceuticals, the TAM818, and also the gene therapy for dogs, cats, and horses too.
Wow.
So we're talking about we're looking for some marketing company that wants to do this. But to our surprise, and I won't mention names, some of the large pet food companies have talked to us when we presented to them and told them what we can do with reversing age in dogs, and cats. That would be major. They said, believe it or not, we don't see a market for that. And I thought, what? These guys are crazy. But they decided they didn't want to do it. So we're still looking for somebody who's interested in marketing these things, because as I said, we don't want to market. We just want to do research.
Yeah.
License it to them and they can do it.
Defy Time, is that only skincare at this stage?
No, not at all.
Oh.
Their website is defytimer.com. So DEFYTIMER.com.
I'm going there.
If you go to it, you'll see they have all kinds of products now.
Wow. Okay. And is it affordable for average people?
No.
It's not yet.
It's not because they're greedy or trying to make a lot of money. It's because this molecule TAM818 is very expensive to make. And I just keep thinking of, we get royalties when people buy these products. We get royalties, and we're putting all that money into finding inexpensive ways to cure all of it. So
we need to support these companies if we can, obviously.
I call it marching into hell for a heavenly cause. Okay? My goal is not to make the wealthy younger. My goal is to make everybody younger. And
but you have to
make everybody younger. We first got to make the wealthy.
Yeah. That's just the way it is in the world. Hey, look, Bill, you've just this incredible interview. This is really, I think, going to open people's eyes as to what's coming and what we can hope for, and also these products that we can already get involved with in some way. I mean, isogenesis from Isogenics and things are not out of people's range, and I'm trying to get some here. I haven't managed to get any yet.
Can I give just the website so people can go find these products I talked about? So TA65, the website is tasciences.com. Isagenix is isagenix.com, so isagenix.com. Defy Time is defytimer, defytimer.com. And then Labella, the gene therapy, that's Labella GT, it's short for gene therapeutics. So Labella, LIBELLA-GT.com. And those are the places everybody can go to find out how to get their hands on
some good
products that are legit.
They're legit, and they're going to help you slow down the aging process. I think that's we're all super excited about the work that you're doing, and thank you so much, Bill, for keeping up the good fight, because I know it can't be easy, and it can't be easy fighting against the naysayers. It can't be easy getting the funding. It can't be easy any of the things that you do. But that's why you're I think we learn a lot from ultramarathon running, don't we, about perseverance?
Yeah, well, this company is my ultramarathon now.
It sure is. It's a huge laboratory, and you've put your heart and soul and your life into it. And I really hope that you can, for us, for you, your friends, your beautiful Molly, for my parents, I hope that we can get that breakthrough soon.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Thanks, Bill.
All right.
Wanted to let you guys know about my new Mindset Academy. It's called The Path of an Athlete, and it's all about how to develop mental toughness, resilience, leadership skills, how to overcome those limiting beliefs, those self-doubts that we all have, and how you can achieve your dreams and fulfill your potential. So head on over to lisatamati.co.nz/e-course to find out all about it and get involved.
You've been listening to Pushing the Limits, brought to you by Running Hot Coaching, your online health and fitness coaching platform. For more information, visit us at www.runninghotcoaching.com.